The soft hum of the office air conditioning was the only sound in the spacious, glass-walled corner suite of Alexander Kane. Sunlight glinted off the chrome surfaces of his desk, and the skyline of the city stretched endlessly beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows. Alexander sat back in his leather chair, fingers steepled, staring at the gala invitation resting on his desk. It was an event every elite in the city had been buzzing about for weeks, a high society affair where appearances mattered more than substance, and whispers carried further than the clinking of champagne glasses. A knock on the door broke the silence. "Nia, come in," Alexander called without turning. Nia Thompson stepped into the office with her usual quiet confidence. Her tailored blouse and pencil skirt were simple yet elegant, the kind of understated style that drew respect without demanding it. She carried a folder in one hand and a coffee in the other, a practical elegance Alexander had long admired. "You wanted to see me, sir?" she asked, setting the coffee beside his keyboard. Alexander looked at her and, for a moment, just studied her, the way her posture combined professionalism with effortless grace, the way her eyes always seemed to catch details others missed. "Nia," he said slowly, "I need a guest for the gala tomorrow night. Someone who can handle herself." Nia blinked, confused. "A guest, sir?" He leaned back, fingers tapping lightly against the polished wood. "Yes. Someone who can think on their feet, handle awkward situations, and, more importantly, someone I trust." Nia's brow furrowed. "You mean, you want me to come?" Alexander's lips curved into a faint, amused smile. "Yes. I want you to come with me. You'll be my guest." For a moment, Nia didn't speak. The idea seemed absurd. She was his secretary, not a socialite. She didn't belong in the glittering world of champagne towers and whispered conversations behind lace fans. And yet, there was a glint in Alexander's eyes that told her this wasn't a joke. I don't know, sir," she began cautiously. "I'm not exactly society material. You have friends, acquaintances, people who are more society material," he interrupted, a hint of amusement in his tone. "Nia, that's exactly why you're perfect. You're not there to impress them. You're there because you're smart, composed, and completely unpretentious. I want someone real, not someone polished to fit their shallow expectations." Her lips pressed into a thin line as she considered his words. She had seen people in his world, glittering, poised, but hollow. And here he was, defying expectation, asking her to cross a line she had never imagined crossing. "I suppose," she hesitated, "I could attend, if you insist." Alexander's smile widened. "I do insist. Now, just one thing, don't let them intimidate you. Remember, you're as capable as anyone in that room. And if anyone dares to mock you," he let the sentence hang, a faint warning glinting in his eyes. "You handle it. I know you can." Nia nodded slowly, feeling a strange mixture of apprehension and excitement. For years, she had worked behind the scenes, her competence quietly supporting Alexander's empire, rarely noticed beyond the office walls. And now, she would step into a world where every glance could be judgmental, every smile potentially condescending. "You'll be fine," Alexander said, returning his attention to the gala invitation. "Just be yourself. That's more than enough." As Nia left the office, her mind was a whirl of possibilities. Could she navigate this glittering maze of judgment and expectation? Could she survive the whispers and laughter that she was sure would greet her? And yet, deep down, a spark of anticipation flickered. Maybe this was a chance, not just to accompany Alexander, but to prove to herself that she belonged anywhere she chose. Meanwhile, Alexander leaned back, watching her disappear through the doorway. His friends would undoubtedly scoff, perhaps even laugh, at his choice. But he didn't care. He had chosen Nia because she was remarkable, not because she fit some societal mold. And he was quietly thrilled to see how the night would unfold, especially if it made the world notice someone as exceptional as Nia Thompson. The gala invitation gleamed on his desk, and Alexander allowed himself a small, private smile. Tomorrow night, the world would get a glimpse of the woman who had quietly impressed him every single day, and he would be right there, proud to call her his guest. The limousine slid to a smooth stop in front of the grand estate hosting the gala, its walls bathed in golden light that spilled across the manicured gardens. Nia stepped out first, her heels clicking against the polished stone as she adjusted the elegant black dress Alexander had insisted she wear, simple, yet impossibly sophisticated. The fabric hugged her figure gracefully, and for the first time, she felt the thrill of stepping into a world she had only ever glimpsed from the office window. Alexander emerged behind her, impeccably dressed in a classic black tuxedo, his presence commanding immediate attention. Heads turned, whispers floated, and cameras flashed discreetly. He offered Nia his arm, a subtle gesture that made her chest tighten with a mix of nerves and pride. As they walked toward the entrance, a group of Alexander's friends approached, glasses of champagne in hand, expressions caught somewhere between amusement and disbelief. "Alex, you really brought her," one of them sneered, raising an eyebrow as if daring him to explain. "Yes," Alexander said smoothly, his gaze sharp. "This is Nia Thompson." The laughter that followed was quick and sharp, the kind that came from people who believed social status could be measured in dress codes and family names. Nia felt a heat rise to her cheeks, but she refused to shrink. She lifted her chin, allowed a small, polite smile, and offered a nod. Alexander noticed her posture and felt a quiet surge of pride. She wasn't just enduring their mockery, she was standing her ground. That alone set her apart in a room full of polished, expectant faces. Inside, the ballroom glittered with opulence. Chandeliers dripped crystal light, casting sparkling reflections across gold-trimmed walls. Guests moved in practiced elegance, laughter and polite conversation weaving through the room like music. Nia felt a pang of self-consciousness but forced herself to take in the scene with curiosity rather than fear. She had navigated boardrooms and contracts with precision, surely she could navigate this world too. Alexander guided her toward a circle of influential guests, his arm a reassuring presence. But whispers followed them, sharp enough to sting. "Who is she?" "The secretary." "Really, Alex?" Nia caught the words, the weight of judgment pressing against her confidence. But she held her composure, offering a calm, confident smile each time someone's eyes lingered with suspicion. Every glance became a challenge she quietly accepted. Alexander, sensing the tension, leaned slightly closer. "Ignore them. Watch and listen. Let the evening unfold." His tone was gentle, but it carried authority. He wasn't asking, he was instructing. Moments later, the host approached, a tall woman with a perfectly poised smile. "Alexander, so glad you could make it." "And, this is your guest?" she asked, looking Nia up and down. Her smile was polite but her eyes carried the faintest trace of disbelief. "Yes," Alexander said simply. "Nia Thompson." Nia extended her hand with confidence, her voice steady as she replied, "It's an honor to be here." Her charm was understated, but it was enough to catch the host off guard, making the initial skepticism waver. As the evening unfolded, Nia moved with cautious grace, mingling carefully, listening more than speaking, yet always leaving a subtle impression. She complimented artwork she understood, shared a quiet insight when asked about charity initiatives, and, most importantly, she never allowed the whispers or stares to unbalance her. Alexander watched her from across the room, a faint, proud smile tugging at the corners of his lips. The laughter and sneers from his friends seemed increasingly petty compared to the quiet, commanding presence Nia was projecting. By the end of the night's first hour, the whispers had shifted. Where there had been disbelief, there was curiosity. Where there had been mockery, there was acknowledgement. People were beginning to notice that Nia Thompson was not a mere secretary brought for novelty, she was a woman of substance, grace, and intelligence. And as Alexander guided her toward the center of the gala, a small part of him silently celebrated, not just the social victory, but the subtle magic of seeing someone he respected shine where no one had expected her to. The evening had been tense but manageable until the host announced the charity auction. The room's energy shifted instantly, wealthy guests murmured about bidding strategies, some subtly sizing up their competition, while others leaned in, eager to display their generosity. Alexander's friends nudged each other, whispering under their breaths, a mixture of amusement and doubt painted across their faces. "Watch this," one muttered. "Let's see if she even knows what to do." Nia, however, didn't flinch. She had prepared herself mentally for ridicule, but she had also come with a quiet confidence in her abilities. She had attended charity events before, studied business strategies, and had a mind as sharp as any of the room's affluent attendees. Tonight, she would not be invisible. The first item up for auction was a rare painting, its value astronomical. A wealthy guest made the opening bid, raising a glass of champagne in a casual display of wealth. Nia observed silently, noting the subtle dynamics, the hesitation in others, the strategies in the way they raised their paddles. "Would you like to bid, Nia?" Alexander asked quietly, his eyes glinting with encouragement. She hesitated only for a second. Then, with a calm smile, she raised her paddle. The room froze, some eyebrows arching in surprise. The bidding escalated, and Nia's strategic approach quickly became apparent. She didn't overbid recklessly, she waited, analyzed the competition, and raised her bid at precisely the right moments. Gasps echoed through the room as the final gavel fell. Nia had secured the painting. A few guests muttered in disbelief, some even begrudgingly impressed. Alexander's friends were momentarily speechless, their earlier smirks fading into awkward acknowledgement. "Impressive," Alexander whispered, leaning close. "You just rewrote their expectations." Nia's smile was modest, but her eyes shone with quiet triumph. She hadn't come here to prove anything to Alexander's friends, but in the process, she had done exactly that. The next surprise came when a logistical mishap occurred, a miscommunication about the seating arrangements for the gala's dinner segment. Guests murmured in frustration as the host tried to organize the chaos. Without hesitation, Nia approached, offering calm, practical suggestions. She coordinated smoothly with the staff, reassured flustered attendees, and even diffused tension with subtle humor. By the end of the evening, whispers of admiration replaced those of mockery. People began approaching Nia, asking her opinions, complimenting her insight, and engaging her in meaningful conversation. Where they had expected awkwardness, they found composure and grace. Alexander watched her with quiet pride, his earlier amusement replaced with deep respect. She wasn't just surviving the world of the elite, she was commanding it effortlessly. Every laugh, every glance, every whisper of disbelief had transformed into acknowledgement of her intelligence, charm, and poise. At one point, a particularly influential guest, someone Alexander had tried unsuccessfully to impress for years, approached Nia. "I must say," he said, holding out a hand, "you have remarkable insight." "I would never have guessed," he trailed off, clearly caught between admiration and embarrassment. Nia shook his hand with grace. "Thank you. It's been an interesting evening." Alexander leaned closer to her. "You've completely upended their world," he said softly. "And you did it without even trying." Nia laughed lightly, a sound that carried confidence now, rather than hesitation. "I suppose some of us just aren't meant to be underestimated." As the evening wound down, Alexander's friends could no longer disguise their respect, though pride still mingled awkwardly with disbelief. Nia had done what they hadn't expected, she had captured attention not with extravagance or pretense, but with intelligence, poise, and authenticity. For the first time that night, Alexander saw the full spectrum of Nia's capabilities. She wasn't just his secretary, the woman who managed his calendar and documents with precision, she was remarkable, capable of stepping into any arena and commanding respect without losing herself. And as they prepared to leave, Alexander knew that this evening was more than a social experiment. It was the beginning of something deeper, for both of them. The gala's final hours glimmered with a softer, warmer light, the initial tension having faded into an atmosphere of quiet admiration. Guests who had once whispered behind gloved hands now found themselves drawn toward Nia, intrigued by the effortless combination of intellect and poise she had displayed throughout the evening. As Alexander and Nia moved through the crowd, several influential figures approached them. One high-profile philanthropist, impressed by Nia's auction strategy, stopped to compliment her. "Your insight was remarkable tonight," he said, offering a warm smile. "I hope we'll see more of your expertise at future events." Nia returned the smile, gracious yet unassuming. "Thank you. It was quite an experience," she replied. There was no arrogance in her tone, only a quiet confidence that made her words resonate. Alexander observed the interaction, pride quietly swelling in his chest. He had always known Nia was exceptional, but watching others recognize her brilliance brought a rare satisfaction, a mix of admiration and protective affection. Even Alexander's friends, who had initially mocked the invitation, approached with hesitant congratulations. One of them cleared his throat, attempting to mask his surprise. "I have to admit, I underestimated her. She's impressive." Nia nodded politely, offering a small, sincere smile. She felt no need to boast, her actions had spoken louder than any words could. Alexander, noticing her grace, leaned in slightly. "See," he whispered. "They can't help but notice you now. And you didn't have to change a thing." The evening continued with a few moments of quiet, personal reflection. Alexander guided Nia toward the balcony overlooking the city skyline, away from the chatter and flashing cameras. The cool night air brushed against their faces, and for a moment, the world seemed to pause around them. "You handled yourself beautifully tonight," Alexander said softly. "I wasn't sure how the crowd would react, but you exceeded every expectation." Nia looked at him, a mix of relief and pride in her eyes. "I didn't come here to prove anything to them," she admitted. "I just wanted to do my best. I wasn't sure if it would be enough." Alexander shook his head, his smile both tender and admiring. "It wasn't just enough, it was extraordinary. You turned skepticism into admiration, and for that, you have my respect, and perhaps a little more than that." His voice carried a weight that made Nia's heart flutter. As they stood together, a subtle, shared understanding passed between them. It was no longer just about social appearances or breaking expectations, it was about recognizing the value in one another, the rare kind of respect that forms the foundation for something far deeper. Back inside, the gala's finale approached. The host made a closing announcement, highlighting those who had made significant contributions and shone through the evening. When Nia's name was mentioned, not as Alexander's guest, but as an individual whose intellect and composure had impressed everyone, applause rippled through the room. Heads turned, whispers became praise, and Alexander's friends exchanged glances, now tinged with admiration rather than mockery. Nia's smile widened, genuine and unguarded this time. She had not only survived the night, she had transformed it. She had proven that grace, intelligence, and authenticity could hold their own, even among the glittering elite. Alexander placed a hand lightly on her back, a subtle gesture of pride and connection. "Shall we leave before anyone else tries to figure out what just happened?" he said with a soft chuckle. Nia laughed quietly, a sound of relief and satisfaction. "Yes, I think we've made quite an impression tonight." As they departed, Alexander's friends lingered in awe, some still whispering but now in admiration. Nia had not just been accepted, she had been respected, celebrated even. And Alexander, walking beside her, knew that this night had changed everything, the perceptions of high society, the dynamic between them, and perhaps, the beginning of something neither of them had expected. The city lights stretched endlessly before them, a glittering reflection of the evening's triumph. For Nia, it was more than a night of societal recognition, it was a night of self-realization. She could navigate any world, command respect without compromise, and stand beside someone who valued her for exactly who she was. And as Alexander opened the limousine door for her, their fingers brushed lightly, a silent, mutual acknowledgement of the bond that had deepened beyond professional boundaries. The world might have laughed at the beginning, but by the end, it had no choice but to recognize her brilliance. The gala was winding down. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over the remaining guests, whose laughter and conversation now carried a genuine tone of respect and admiration rather than judgment. Nia moved through the crowd with ease, exchanging final pleasantries and quietly enjoying the recognition she had earned. Every whispered compliment and sincere smile reminded her that she belonged, not as an accessory to someone else, but as herself, capable and unshakable. Alexander followed her closely, watching the way her confidence had blossomed throughout the evening. She had transformed the doubts and sneers of high society into curiosity and admiration. He couldn't help but smile, a soft, private grin that no one else could see. Nia had proven herself in every way, yet she had remained authentically herself, exactly the kind of strength he admired most. As the last guests departed, Alexander gestured toward the balcony, the city lights twinkling below like a sea of stars. "Shall we get some fresh air before the evening ends?" he asked. Nia nodded, her heart still racing from the triumph of the night. Outside, the cool breeze carried the faint scent of the city below. They stood in silence for a moment, watching the glowing skyline, the noise of the gala fading behind them. "You know," Alexander began, his voice low and thoughtful, "tonight wasn't just about them noticing you. It was about me realizing how much I value everything you are." Nia looked at him, startled for a fraction of a second, then smiled softly. "I didn't come here to impress anyone, Alexander," she said. "I just wanted to be myself. But I suppose it's nice to be noticed in that way." Alexander took a step closer, their shoulders almost touching. "Being yourself is exactly why you were noticed. And it's why he paused, searching for the right words, admire you. More than you might realize." A quiet warmth spread through Nia's chest. She had never expected this night to carry more than social tension and professional pride. And yet, here he was, Alexander Kane, seeing her, truly seeing her, beyond the boundaries of work and society. Before either of them spoke again, a playful, intimate silence fell over them. The city lights reflected in her eyes, and Alexander found himself captivated, not just by her beauty, but by her intelligence, her confidence, her resilience. "I think," Nia said quietly, a faint smile tugging at her lips, "we made quite an impression tonight. Not just on them, but on ourselves, too." Alexander chuckled softly, a sound that carried both amusement and something deeper. "Indeed. And somehow, I think this is just the beginning." Their hands brushed lightly as he extended his arm, not as a professional gesture, but as an intimate, protective connection. She took it, letting herself be guided back toward the limousine. The touch lingered longer than necessary, and neither of them moved away immediately, a quiet acknowledgement of the bond that had deepened over the course of the night. As the car door closed and they were driven away from the glittering world of high society, the evening's events replayed in Nia's mind, not just the triumphs and respect earned, but the subtle, unspoken connection she now shared with Alexander. For the first time, she felt a flicker of something more than professional admiration, a possibility, fragile but undeniable. Alexander, sitting beside her, glanced at her through the dim light. "I'm glad you came with me tonight," he said softly, almost as if confessing a secret. Nia's lips curved into a small, knowing smile. "Me too," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. And in that shared silence, amid the quiet hum of the city lights and the fading echoes of the gala, both of them realized that something extraordinary had begun. What started as an unlikely invitation had become a night of recognition, respect, and perhaps, the first stirrings of something far more profound. The limousine drove on, leaving the glittering world behind, but carrying forward the promise of a connection that neither of them could ignore, a subtle, electric beginning to a story that was only just starting.